Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr, and you're listening to Fiber Talk, that twice-weekly podcast for people who do the needle and thread fine art thing. And this week, Jenny Adin-Christie. Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
Good to have you with us here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
You have a long career at the Royal School and are now teaching and designing on your own. That's a full load for people. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever worked anything other than a lot more than full time in my career.
One of those. I have a full-time job. It's only 80 hours a week. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that sums it up. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we say that you're teaching on your own, what tell about that? What are you teaching? You have a regular schedule? How does that work?
Yeah, so when I left the RSN, I set up my own studio. It's in my garden at my home in Surrey, south of London, and I teach. You
just made a whole bunch of people really jealous right there. So okay.
Well, it was a luxury, yes, that I'd saved for a long time on the back of my stitching. But it does feel like a luxury. It's my second home, really. But I have classes there approximately a week every month, and I have a group of about 6 to 8 ladies who come each day, and they can be different ladies every day, all coming to do very, very different things. So it's very much one-to-one tuition and a small group, and some are doing tiny little projects, some are doing my designs, some are doing great big designs like altar frontals, huge range of things. And then I also go out to teach for embroiderers guilds around the country, and have over the last kind of 6 years been teaching abroad quite a lot as well.
Oh, that's a lot of teaching.
Yes.
Okay, I need a mental picture so I can live vicariously here. Tell me about, so you say in your garden you have a building where you have a studio and then able to be outside when the weather's good. How does that all work? I have to have this picture.
So I have a very long garden, so I'm able to walk down the garden to work, which at least gives me space from the house, so I can separate work and home, which is nice. But I can easily pop home when I've forgotten something, or get more milk and cake for the ladies, and to deal with my daughter as well. So it's a really good balance in that way. And when I want to work late at night, I can just pop down the garden in my pajamas and do a bit more work in the studio. So it's nice and flexible, and we have a deck outside the front of the studio, so the ladies can sit out there and have their tea when it's nice enough.
Oh, okay. And I'm picturing classic English garden.
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't like that until very recently. We've been working a lot at the garden, and now I'm planting all the plants that I want to draw and include in my embroideries. So that's the plan at the moment.
Oh, that's right. So that becomes a source. That's inspiration. So that's a tax write-off right there.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Oh, what a treat then. So, to take a class in that environment, that's fantastic. And I know what you mean about keeping it separate from the home.
Yeah, I think that's really important that you have that bit of separation, because I think most embroiderers are a little obsessive about their work. And it's nice just to have that change of space, and without having to trek into London, trek on a long journey to work, it's still nice to have that little bit of separation.
Yeah. It's you almost have to have it, because when we work here at home, we have all the work it's in one room, and you can at least walk away from it, though.
Indeed, you can close the door on it sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah,
and you have to. You have to, or it never
often,
ends.
But...
Yeah. Oh, yeah, if it never ends. So does all the stitching stay out there, or do you have personal stitching in the house that?
I do bring things up to the house. Sometimes it's nice to sit in, if I'm often working most evenings, so I will bring stitching up to the house to sit with my daughter and my husband, so that they at least see me a little bit. So I do bring bits up here as well, and I have an office in the house for the late night emails as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, that sounds like that's ideal right there. You win.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So then these ladies that come each week, then basically they're just bringing whatever project they work on, and then you're there to help them.
That's right. So they can come, and some of them come as beginners, and they want to sort of study a selection of my designs with me so they can progress and get more experienced. Others have been coming for many, many years and extremely experienced, and will often ask me to design a piece for them that we then work together, or they come with their own design ideas and we do some drawing and work that up together.
I'm moving to England. I'm going to be your neighbor.
You'd be welcome anytime. We have quite a lot of ladies that travel from abroad to come and have a week of classes. So the nice thing in that flexibility is someone can book for 3, 4, 5 days and come and do whatever they like, but have a bit longer session, more intensive session like that. Yeah.
What a treat. What a treat. And then you're still yeah, I cannot talk today. You're still teaching with the Royal School then.
Yes, I still teach a little for the school. I haven't taught so much for them in the last couple of years, simply through having so much of my own work to do. But I go in and teach the seasonal school classes, which are the shorter kind of day classes. I often do maybe a 5-day workshop because the sort of projects I teach are fairly complex. So people like to come over a little bit longer period to really get into them. Mm-hmm.
So you keep your hand in then. That's great.
Absolutely, yes. I still see it as my second home over there. So,
well, yeah, because you were there a long time.
I was, yes, yeah. It was about 13 years in total with my training, and then 10 years in the studio and as a tutor.
Yeah, you're a fixture there. That's great.
A veteran, as I think you said.
Yes, yeah. Veteran. Yep. So your training there, you went through the full diploma course?
I did what was called the Apprenticeship. So that doesn't exist any longer, but it was a 3-year training course, a very traditional apprenticeship. That took 6 students a year, and then we did 2 years of study in the studio on learning every aspect of traditional hand embroidery, and then a 3rd year in the commercial studio working on commissions, putting that into practice.
See, that appeals to me, being able to dig in like that to something that's as much fun as stitching. And,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty intensive at times and almost, you could say, grueling at times because everyone kind of imagines the idyll of 9 to 5 stitching every day as being utterly marvelous, and it is, but at times it's pretty hard going as well. But there's, the love of it keeps you going through the tougher hours.
Yeah, I often wonder that because I don't think I'm really typical, but for people kind of like me for whom it's a hobby,
yes,
I scare up like last night I scared up a half hour, and some nights I get 2 hours, and on weekends I might get 3 or 4 hours, and always thinking, boy, it'd be nice if I had another empty hour somewhere to sit down and stitch. But
absolutely,
there's a big difference between that and showing up at 9 and effectively stitching all day long.
Indeed, and you do need it. It takes a lot of discipline to keep it up actually all the time, and you get used to that discipline, and it does become a way of life really. And of course, the 9 to 5 is completely not the case actually. It's more like 8 till 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 sometimes.
Yeah. I wonder how many hobbyists, given that opportunity after a month, will go, wait a minute, I don't think I want to do this.
And quite a fair number of people who started the apprenticeship, found after a while it was a lot more grueling than they'd imagined. Mm-hmm. And we did lose a few along the way. And it was a course that, you studied all year. You had 4 weeks holiday a year. So you didn't have long holidays to recover in between terms or anything. It was pretty full on.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how many of those 6 actually made it through the whole thing.
4 qualified in my year.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah, other years weren't so great, but
yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of its own self-filtering thing. And
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and you have to really love it and be prepared to commit yourself heart and soul to it to make a success of it. It's not something that you can, dash in and suddenly have a fulfilling career. You've got to really, really work at it.
and did you in all those years ever feel burnout, or has it always just been part of your blood?
I think it is in my blood. I don't know any other way of life and wouldn't want any other way of life. But I think you sometimes get a bit of burnout when the hours are very, very long. But there's always something that keeps you going.
Yeah. Now, your design work, is that where, because they do very much design-oriented teaching there, from what I understand. Is that really
Yes.
where you got started with your designing?
Indeed, and I think I've always had a love for drawing as much as for stitching, and my very early training, even at school, was very much art and textiles hand in hand, and I think you can't really have one without the other successfully. But as I started the apprenticeship, the RSN sent us to Kingston University to train in art and design one day every week. So we had a really intensive design session alongside the stitching. And that gave me a real understanding of how to develop both sides of the work. And I think as a professional embroiderer, you have to be able to do both, because the design things is what gives you an interest internationally, not necessarily just the skill in stitching.
Mm-hmm. And what got you started? Was it as a child, mom taught you? Whatever got you started doing this?
Yeah, very much so. I come from a family who greatly value craftsmanship. My mum was a textiles teacher at primary level, and my aunts all make lace, and my uncle's a cabinet maker. My father was a gunsmith and fishing rod builder. So
You didn't have a choice.
and I didn't really. It had to be something creative, unless I'd rebelled completely. But I grew up with, every weekend we spent making things, and so I've always had that love since I was little.
What a great environment, though. Holy smokes.
Yeah, it was
You
a
got
very
exposed to
creative
everything.
environment. Yeah.
Wow. Lace. Who'd you say it was? Your mother made lace?
No, my aunts
Your
all
aunt.
made bobbin and needle lace and tatting.
Oh, that stuff fascinates me.
Yeah, indeed. Yes,
Yeah,
yeah. So that's the sort of thing I learned in my school holidays when I was at school.
So you can do a little bobbin lace?
Yes, I did bobbin lace for many years.
Oh, I have no idea how you guys keep track of all those sticks.
Yeah, it's quite complex, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure once you learn it and do it, it all makes sense. But
That's right. Yes, yeah. It's very soothing to do, actually.
yeah, it always, there's kind of that clicking of the wooden
Yeah, there's something very
bobbins.
rhythmic about it, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
What made you go to the Royal School? You kind of progressed along, learning how to.
Yeah, I got much more into textiles at secondary school, and I was putting heart and soul into my studies for that, and not so much into my other subjects that everyone, of course, wanted me to do. I was fortunate that my family supported me in the textiles, and the school actually were very supportive, and because I'd done more work than I needed to, they let me take my senior A level early. Which was fortunate because they got rid of textiles at the school pretty much following that, and had they not allowed me to do it, I would never have taken that route. So they were very supportive. And it was once I was doing that A level that a lady who'd known me since I was a small girl suggested the Royal School to me, and I'd never heard of it before then, and told me about the apprenticeship. And to me, it seemed idyllic. I was looking at universities for textile courses, but the intensive study in the traditional embroidery appealed to me much more. So I applied and was given one of the places.
Hmm. See, that's what's, that as a former teacher just bugs me that those kinds of things are not necessarily, certainly in the States here, just not necessarily available. A lot of that art type thing has just been eliminated.
I think that's very true here as well. And in fact, the textiles teacher who guided me through that A level has just retired recently, and not happily, because she's been diverted into teaching completely random subjects rather than textiles. And she's not able to pursue her specialism any longer, and it's a great loss. And for people like me, my passion was textiles, and that was considered fine to study that and pursue a career in it. But I think that's dwindling.
Yeah, it's just a shame, because not everybody fits into the go to university, get a degree in bioengineering.
Yes. Yes, and isn't it's marvelous that we don't all fit that box, isn't it?
Well, yes. But the outlets for people who don't fit are just so few.
Fewer. Yes, that's very true. Yeah.
Very frustrating. And then look at you, and I'm sure that we could line up a few hundred people from the Royal School.
Oh, absolutely.
Who all have followed basically that same path and
Sure.
are contributing and happier and better off in so many ways because they had that opportunity.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. Yeah, completely true. And it's something that needs sorting in education.
Yes, it does. I mean, I don't think too many of them have a studio at the end of an English garden, but
No. But that's taken a lot of years to get to that point. And I think that's the other thing. The learning to be disciplined in a subject and really put your all into it is really important.
Yeah. Well, and then I look at your situation here and the number of people showing up every week, and then you're teaching all over the world, basically, that you've been able, because you were given that opportunity, you've been able to expose so many people and help people all who are interested in that, who you and many other teachers who just people who not had a chance or would not have had a chance.
Absolutely. And I think there's an awful lot of women who say, if only I'd had the chance I particularly wanted to follow a career in embroidery or textiles, but parents, family, school said, you've got to follow a different career, something more suitable. And they're now regaining that love by doing classes later in life. And they only wish they could have done it earlier when they could see better.
Yeah. Some truth to that. Yeah.
But there's a great joy in I think at the moment there's a huge surge of enthusiasm around the world for learning, particularly traditional and hand embroidery that's time consuming and complex potentially, but people seem to love to learn it, and there's a great passion for it again. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, I'm glad you're seeing that, because we've had several discussions here on Fiber Talk with people who are experiencing the same thing, and I'm glad to hear that with all your traveling you do, that you're seeing that too. There does seem to be
totally.
a real growth. Yes.
Yeah, and I think, the projects I tend to do are, as I said, are fairly complex and involve a lot of time commitment, fairly complex techniques to master, but people seem to love that complexity and seek more and more of it, which is really hopeful. They're not dashing to the quick, easy to produce textiles that we might imagine that they are in a rushed, panicky kind of lifestyle. They really want the soothing, mindful, time consuming escape kind of stitching.
Well, I think there's the key word, escape.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Really. Yeah. It's and I think that we're seeing. I mean, we see the pendulum swing all over the place in various areas, but this is one where what do I do with my personal time so that it's rewarding and relaxing and enjoyable?
Yes, and also that it has some kind of merit at the end of it. You're producing beautiful things and enjoying the process.
Yeah, isn't that the truth too? Yeah, merit at the end. Yep.
Indeed.
I spent 100 hours on this, and it looks pretty good. Thank you very much.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah. I mean, there's a great joy in getting emails from people all over the world saying they've produced one of the kit designs, which I think are really challenging designs, and they said they've loved every minute, and it's been challenging, and they're delighted with the outcome, and it's so satisfying.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say people are finding something challenging and taking it on. because
Yes, indeed.
yeah, because
It
that's
amazes me.
that's an aspect of discussion is do you do needlework because it's easy and mindless? Do you do it
Yes.
because it exercises another area of your brain and makes you actually work at it? Yeah, I think
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
yeah,
And
there's
some people do just want to do, a cross-stitch sampler, and they can follow a chart and can just completely simple and get absorbed in it in that way. And others, often I find the ones who are living more frenetic working lives can't relax enough to just do something mindless in their spare time. So they want something challenging but different. And it keeps them motivated and makes them think in a different way.
okay. Now you got me evaluating myself here. I wonder why, because I tend to migrate toward complex projects.
Yes, yeah, yeah, good for
and
you.
and my my paying job in general is pretty high strung, so I bet that's what
Yes,
it is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So these days, stump work, white work, gold work, is that your primary focus?
It is, yes. I mean, I often people ask me what my preferred or favorite technique is, and I'm afraid I don't particularly have one. The only thing I don't enjoy so much is black work. I don't enjoy the counted aspects of black work so much, but um, I love all the techniques really, and my main joy at the moment is in combining them together. So I rarely do just a piece of white work or just a piece of gold work. There's too many exciting materials and stitches, so I try to combine them together into new ways.
Uh-huh. So you're not a purist then, we can say with
No,
confidence.
I'm not. I mean, I'm very much inspired, totally inspired by historical techniques, and I'm always studying those in museums and galleries and my own pieces. But my joy is in remixing those and coming up with a new slant on them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I got to believe that with the Royal School gives you that historical foundation that, yeah,
Absolutely,
allows
yeah.
you to branch
That's
out.
very
Yeah.
strong there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, see, that's the part that appeals to me with the Royal School is that foundation, that historical. This is the way it's done. This is the way it's been done,
Absolutely.
and yeah,
Yes.
and then
And I think
okay,
it's very much like a painter, isn't it? So you learn the traditional methods of painting, and then once you've got those under your belt, you've got a thorough understanding and palette of techniques that you can then play with in your own way.
right, yeah. See, to me, that's no matter what course I would take at the Royal School, that would be the value.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, and fundamentally, and when I learnt there and when I teach now, my key thing is to teach people how to manage the stitches and how to manage their needle and how to learn the stitch so that they can govern it themselves and be in control and make it do what they want it to do, rather than just generic kind of learning of stitches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. That's the way I'm seeing it. If I were to ever get there, yep.
Yes. Oh, you've never been?
No, never have.
Oh,
No.
I hope you'll make it. You must make a trip.
Yeah. Well, someday I can
Yeah,
hope.
sure. When you can fit
Someday.
it in your busy schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. For now, I'll just scare up an hour in the evenings.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. No, I just think that's so critical for these uh, art type activities is to be able to have, and we've got 2 or 3 schools, one in San Francisco and a couple on the East Coast.
Yeah,
These institutions, these organizations that can give you a home base, so to speak, and allow you to learn those basics and learn how to do them well, and then go from there. I just think that's so important. And then people like you who are then able to take that knowledge and share it by teaching in other places is just so important to keeping all of this going and going in the right direction.
absolutely. And I mean, I teach an awful lot about simply how to use a needle and make that your drawing tool rather than just a thing that pulls the thread up and down through the fabric. And it fascinates me, the desire, and in every country I go to, people want to come and learn to really be in control of their needle in that way and learn to make it work for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What interests are you seeing in Europe in general in needlework?
There's a huge resurgence of interest in, I would say, in stump work particularly, or raised embroidery. I think that's hugely appealing to people. It was revived by people like Barbara and Roy Hurst, who did fabulous books on the subject back in the 80s. And then Jane Nicholas, of course, in Australia, who's done her own fabulous slant on raised embroidery. And I think
does she know something about raised embroidery?
Absolutely, she does, indeed.
Stuff is unbelievable, isn't it?
Indeed, absolutely. But I think that it's that type of stitching which really does combine together goldwork and silkwork and metalwork. All sorts of things together is appealing to people because you can't get frustrated with one particular technique. It's very eclectic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And people like the three-dimensional work. And the things I've been doing most recently are making three-dimensional items such as birds and bags and little boxes and needle cases with raised work on them. And people seem to love making an item rather than another picture, and making it an item that does something rather than just being an isolated embroidery.
Another thing to dust, yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, yeah. Yes.
That's interesting that you're seeing interest and growth in stump work, because for so many it's considered such an advanced technique.
Yeah, and I think it's actually very approachable. I mean, I've taught children stump work techniques before, and I think it's very appealing to them because it has that lovely narrative side to it, really kind of storytelling technique, and the padding and all the different materials. You know, you could really include any material you liked within its structure. And so it's constantly exciting. And when you open one of the kits for one of the stump work designs, you know, it's full of myriad fascinating little gadgets and materials, beads and pearls, and you can't help but be excited about it.
Yeah, and that's also interesting, looking to make something that's going to be or do something rather than another picture on the wall. Because, yeah, we all only have so much wall space, yeah.
Oh, that's right. And one of the most popular designs I've done recently are these little bird etuis, which is a miniature wren worked in stump work techniques, combining 17th century stitches together with some new ideas. And the bird becomes an etui, so the wings open to reveal needle cases, and has a thread cutter in the beak and a thimble in the back. And it sits on a little hillock with pincushion and little etui scissors, and that functional item seems to have great appeal for people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and something you could take on a plane, they'd never know.
Exactly. Yes, it would certainly be intriguing for them in the airport.
Yes, never know. Yeah. No, this. Well, I wanted to ask you about the one that caught my eye. Is it Gothic needle case?
Yes. Yes, that's right.
I mean, that little thing has a lot going on just on the cover, and then it's.
So that design was inspired by Gawthorpe Hall, which is in Lancashire, northwest UK. And Gawthorpe Hall was owned by the K. Shuttleworth family, of whom Rachel K. Shuttleworth was the daughter of that family, and was a great collector of textiles and lace and embroidery. She amassed a collection which is over 10,000 items. Ooh. Enormous and huge range, so from tiny things up to huge textiles and everything in between. And she was quite a woman. She was of aristocratic birth, of course, but she was very much involved in philanthropic enterprises and supported lots of things that weren't very fashionable at the time, like supporting unmarried mothers and working for the probation service. But alongside that, she felt that textiles were hugely important as a means of supporting people who were going through hard times and giving them something positive and creative to do. Very much on the modern thinking of mindfulness. She was a bit before her time with that, really. And she also set up girl guiding in the northwest of England. And that's why my design for the Gothic needle case includes a fish, because she was awarded the Silver Fish Award, which is the highest award you can get as a girl guide.
Oh.
And it's supposed to symbolize women swimming upstream against the tides. And she certainly did that. And I thought that was a rather lovely symbol.
Mm-hmm. I wondered how that fish got involved there. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. You guys always have all the history fun. That's
yeah, there's a lot of history there, definitely.
Yeah. No, that's because that. I mean, there's that just that little piece. There's several techniques at work in there.
Indeed, yes, and it very much involves a complete mix of my techniques that I love. So definitely there's whitework techniques in there, and then a little gold work and some raised work and silk work as well.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful piece. Yeah. Well played. Yep.
Well, thank you.
Tell me about whitework, because whitework is the one technique. I don't do very much of it, but it really appeals to me. I love white on white things. I just think there's something about them.
They're so fresh and beautiful, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think whitework first became a love for me when I was an RSN apprentice, and I was struggling greatly with the need to work quickly. I was a bit of an obsessive perfectionist in my work, and therefore I struggled to be quick as well. And of course, as a professional embroiderer, you have to work speedily and perfectly at the same time, and I found that very hard to come to grips with. And then I came upon whitework, and I didn't have to make all the decisions about the colour, only about the texture, and therefore I was quicker, and therefore I got more praise for my work, and it left me with a very positive feeling about whitework.
Path of least resistance. There we have it.
Yes, indeed. And I've loved it ever since. And I love the intricacy and the simplicity of the look of it. And yet, of course, it's one of the most complex, or can be one of the most complex types of embroidery to learn and create, because it involves so many eclectic techniques.
Well, I think that's the thing that appeals to me is you can't, if you do it straight as whitework, you got no color to work with. So everything has to come out of the stitches, and your stitch quality shows up.
Oh, it does. And I think that's why some people are afraid of working it, because you've got nowhere to hide, have you?
No, you do not. No.
You can't smudge a bit more color in to hide a dodgy bit.
No, not an option. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then now, on some of these now, you're adding, like in this embroiderer's work basket.
Yes.
We have some color of some kind. What is that? Black? Is it black behind there, or what are you doing there?
Yeah, that tends to be the color you're putting behind the finished work.
That's all that is then. Okay.
That's it. Yeah. So you do get the sense of the tones. It kind of needs something behind it to make the layers of tone make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do think whitework is it's very often one of the last techniques you learn, because it's considered to be difficult, but I kind of feel that students would be well to learn it at the beginning. So you learn to cope with texture and depth before you start adding colour in, a bit like you learn to draw with line before you start to draw with colour.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be a nice role reversal to try teaching in that way.
See, that's interesting that it has that perception and practice, because I've done an awful lot of photography in my years, and a wise person early on said, shoot black and white to start, because if you can get good images with black and white, that means you can control color and composition, or you can control light and composition, and because you can cheat with color.
Yes, exactly. And I think, you get your layers of tone and your composition right, and with embroidery then your texture, and then the color should be the last thing to drop in, really.
Right, because the mind when there's color, the mind fills in so many things that may or may not be there.
It does, absolutely. Yes, yeah. And if a design works and balances in just white, then it's going to work in color if you get that right.
Yes. Yeah, because that's, and I followed that person's advice, and I shot, for many years, I shot black and white. And
yes.
I never regretted it. Never.
You felt it was a good foundation.
Oh, yeah, because you couldn't hide anything.
Sure. Yeah.
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 And so it forced me to learn, well, the light is not right here because it's just flat ugly. But then if
Yes.
then if you shoot it in color, oh, that's pretty. Well, no, it's not. It's
Yes.
terrible.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. It's like getting the skeleton right, isn't it,
right.
underneath?
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. No, I always thought that was good. And so then, yeah, I would agree with you. Whitework would be a place to start rather than a place to evolve into.
Yes, that's true. Yes, absolutely. The only thing, of course, is as you said, you've got to be skilled with your needle to get it right,
Right.
because there is no room to hide.
No, there is not. No. Nope. Now that's okay. Another note. See, I'm learning things from you. This is
Oh,
fantastic.
good.
So what is it that you preferred? If you could only do one thing, is it designing? Is it stitching, teaching? And you can't say everything all together. I mean,
I know that's really hard because I do love the balance, and I do think that my teaching very much funds my own work and my design work, and the other way round, of course. I don't think you can just teach. I think you need to constantly be designing yourself and pursuing your own practice, because teaching can sap you of your ideas and enthusiasm otherwise, because you're constantly giving to other people. But I find I get an awful lot back from my students. So, but if I had to choose one of those and couldn't do anything else, it would be to stitch and design.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, when you teach, you do get an awful lot out of it. But I know what you mean about how it saps you, because you basically have to be an entertainer at all times. You have to be on.
You do, yes,
Yeah.
yes. You're on show, aren't you? And in a class of 20 ladies or ladies and gentlemen who've all come for a really good time, you've got to ensure they have that. So you've got to entertain them and teach them and keep them happy and sort out their problems as well. You're often a counselor as well, I think.
Well, yeah. There's that component too, definitely.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's those are the days that I remember teaching, when people talk about how teachers here, at least here in the States, get the summer off, and
Yes.
what a cush job. And I always say to people, you've obviously never taught.
No, absolutely. You really need that break to freshen your mind again, because it's just so intense. I have endless appreciation for any teacher because they
Yes.
give so much.
Yeah, it's round the clock business for 9 or 10 months of the year. And
Absolutely, yes, yeah. And if you didn't have that break, you would just crash.
Yeah, it would not be pretty. It would not at all.
No,
be
it
pretty.
wouldn't at all.
No.
It wouldn't be good for anybody.
When you have classes mainly with beginner people, what are the hurdles that you find most people encounter?
I find with beginners, sometimes it's just getting used to how to handle their needle, how to sit. Often it's how they approach their frame and their work, and often it's about being comfortable and about their fears as well. I think that's probably the biggest thing. People often come with a fear that it's going to be difficult and they're going to find it hard. And it takes time to relax them and get them to really believe that they're going to be able to do it. And once they start to relax and find they're enjoying it, then that's when they do their best work.
Yeah, we've talked about that before in shows, that fear, but also lack of confidence.
Yes, I think more lack of confidence than fear. That's a better way to describe it, really. And I think often women come with that, particularly more so than men, and they come with that just worry that they're not going to be able to do it. And you've got to build their confidence and give them some starting points and show them that they really can, a little step at a time.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah.
That has to be in the mix, because people should have the mental framework that allows them to just dive in and see what happens.
Absolutely, and I think that is often a struggle with creative work. People have this sort of fear that they don't think it's going to happen. They don't think they're able. But it's a joy when they then realize that they can. And that's just part of creating a supportive environment for teaching, isn't it? So
Yes.
you make them feel relaxed and happy, and then the learning comes without them realizing it.
Yes. Yeah, it's well, it's part of teaching. I mean, it's really part of teaching of any subject.
It is, yes, yes, very much so.
Yeah, other than nuclear physics, you can do it.
Yes. Oh, goodness me.
There are still some
I can't
subjects
imagine
that
teaching
not
that.
everybody can do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be one of them. Yep. When I was going to ask you, you mentioned about getting seated and approaching the frame, and I was going to ask you when we were talking about the Royal School, when you're stitching all day long,
Yes.
that has to be a real top concern. Your posture, your positioning,
It
arm and
really
shoulder
is.
support. Yeah.
Yes, because I mean, if you're going to stitch as a career, from the very beginning, it's absolutely vital that you learn to sit properly at a frame and look after yourself physically, because it's pretty hard going on the joints and on the back particularly, and on your hands and wrists and arms, and you have to be careful of that and to not work too many hours in the same position, and learn to sit properly and use different chairs and that sort of thing. And I think that's important for students even coming on short classes to learn.
Yeah, we were talking just this past week, Vanna Pfeiffer and I, about a little bit about standing up and stitching. And
Right, yes.
is that something you've tried?
I have stitched in many bizarre positions before, not necessarily through choice. I think lying down, lying on your back, curled in strange positions around things. So when you're doing commission work, some of the things do provide an interesting challenge about how you're going to get the needle to the bit you want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
the standing thing, I think, is supposed to be a lot of standing officers now, aren't there? So it might be
Right.
quite a good way to go.
Well, it's a topic that has me intrigued because of the standing offices.
Sure,
And,
yeah, yeah.
and I've been in more than one where people have these desks that can be up and down, and most of them say, "No,
Yes.
I don't stand all day, but I do stand a good portion because I really do better
Yes,
work."
yeah, and I think with the back problems I've had through work, my physiotherapist would advise changing position as regularly as possible is as much help as having a certain chair or a certain desk or whatever. But the flexibility and variation is really important. So the standing sitting idea is good.
Yeah. Do you make it a point to get up and move around if you have long stitching sessions?
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the joys of being freelance, that being a freelance embroiderer requires you to do an awful lot of things as well as just stitch. So you have to be all things to everybody, but that's probably better for you physically than going to work and being given stitching to do from 9 to 5 every day. And I think, when you hop around between teaching and stitching and emails and drawing and everything, inevitably that's better for you.
So that your life and what you have to do gives you those natural breaks then.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
But those who sit down for 5 hours and stitch really need to stand up every now and then,
They
move around
do,
the house.
yes, they need to do a bit of yoga in between.
Yeah, yeah. When you were at the Royal School going through the apprentice program,
Yes.
what kind of seating arrangement did you have? Was it a straight back chair? How did that work?
Yes, we had ergonomic chairs, so
Okay.
they were formed and they were adjusted to fit to us. So I think that's ultimately the best thing. And some people with back issues and things would have kneel-on chairs, and again circulate between a variety of chairs. But they did look after us well in that respect.
Oh, I forgot about those kneel-on chairs. That was
Yeah, some people find those good, and some find them really tricky, but.
Yeah, I tried one of those one time at the office, and I couldn't. I find that the work I do, I have to do obviously a lot of typing, and
Yes,
so
yes.
that doesn't work. I have to have an ergonomic chair with the armrest so that the forearms
Sure,
rest on them.
yes, absolutely.
But then that's what I use when I stitch. Is I have an office chair, fully adjustable office chair, and arms at armrests at two different heights, one for the hand underneath and one for the hand on top.
Sure. And, yes, I have very similar actually. So I think that's one of the best things you can do. Yeah,
I think it's critical. I mean, it allows me to comfortably sit there. But I want to explore this standing thing more. I
think that could have some length in it.
Yeah, I tried it. My stand won't go high enough, so now I got to prop it up on bricks or something. But I'll figure it out.
Oh gosh.
I'll figure it out. Hey, when you've done work for just going to jump all over the place here on you.
Sure.
Inspirations magazine. That's quite an honor to have a design in there. Huh?
I feel it is. I mean, I think it's one of the most beautiful produced magazines around the world, and it's famed for being so beautiful. And the first time I was asked to put work into it, I did feel it was an honour, and I was delighted to be able to put pieces in. And since I've tried to contribute pieces to it, because it's so important to keep a magazine like that going. So many people around the world seem to enjoy it, and they've huge supporters of hand stitching and of complex projects. They don't shy from putting fairly complicated things in there.
No, they do not. No.
Yeah.
Well, it's I mean, that's terrific in its own right, but it also makes an interesting magazine. Even if
it does. Yeah. And I love the way they show the stitches really thoroughly, and the instruction is really thorough, and they really want you to learn from doing the projects and reading the magazine.
When you do a project for them, extra effort in the design in terms of instruction and testing?
I would say not, because I tend to be quite obsessive about my instruction anyway. My instruction books in my kits are rather famed for being incredibly complicated, or comprehensive, I should say. So I find inspirations often will want to reduce what I've written rather than make me do more.
Too much, Jenny. Too much.
Yeah,
back off.
Yeah. And they often have been able to use my diagrams that I draw and things, which is nice that they feel that they're good enough quality to be able to use them rather than having to redo them themselves. So that's rather nice.
Yeah. When you design, is it something you create a design on paper and then stitch, or do you stitch and then write down what you did?
I would say it's a mixture of both, actually. I tend to sketch a design first, and I often sketch in the middle of doing something else. So when I'm working on one piece, I will often sketch whilst doing it, because I find when I'm relaxed into one piece, that's when the ideas come for the next one. And I often find that the initial sketch I do instinctively whilst my mind is on something else, or on a train journey or something like that. I often find that initial sketch is the foundation of the next design, and then I will sample stitches around the idea and then change the drawing a little bit accordingly. So it's a flexible process.
So sketchbook with you all the time then?
Absolutely, yes. Yes. Even in the bedside table.
Never know when an idea. Got to get it
Indeed,
get it down.
They always come in the middle of the night, hey.
Mm-hmm. It's so true, yep. Yeah. Ideas in the middle of the night, early in the morning for me. That's when ideas come. Yeah. As the day wears on, I'm not nearly as creative. No,
that's very true. Yeah.
Now, so you're teaching. Where have you been teaching recently?
My recent trips abroad. Last year I was in Canada teaching for the Embroiderers Guild over there, on Prince Edward Island, and then I was at Beating Around the Bush for Inspirations magazine.
Oh, that has to be a fantastic event.
It is a fantastic event. That's the fourth one I've done now, and it's just I keep going back because it's beautifully organised and a lovely event to be part of. There's a real buzz there that I don't find at every other conference like that. They do a really good job.
Not surprised. A magazine of that quality, that means there's quality people behind it doing everything.
That's
that way.
it. And I think they're such a friendly and supportive team that, you know, they really support the tutors and what they do, and make it easy for you to work with them. So it's a great pleasure to go and work there. It's such an epic journey, of course, but it's worth every mile on the plane.
Yeah, it's a long haul for everybody.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yes, yeah.
So what do you have coming up for teaching?
So next month I'm teaching at Gothic Hall for a week. So I ran a workshop there for a week last year, and it was really popular. So we had a great waiting list that couldn't join the course last year. So we're running that again this year. So we hire rooms at Gothic Hall, which is a National Trust property, and the ladies will stay locally and come and study each day for 5 days. And following that, I'm teaching in Ushaw College in Durham, which has a fabulous Pugin interior. And we're doing a Pugin-inspired brooch there for a group of ladies as a residential course again.
Those sound like fun.
Yeah.
Plus, you always have to do them in some historical building. See, that's...
There's something lovely about that. There's something lovely about the environment of being somewhere that inspired the piece you're doing, and seems to inspire the ladies doing their own as well.
Do you see many men in your classes?
I have to say very few.
Yeah.
I know that the RSN degree is now attracting more men. I think we only ever had one man successfully complete the apprenticeship. But there's men around who enjoy stitching, but I think sometimes they're a bit afraid to come to classes in a sea of women.
Yeah, it's a little intimidating.
It's a shame. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complete role reversal. It's very strange. Yes.
I know, indeed. My husband has been known to join a goldwork class before, and but he did quite enjoy it once he started.
Yeah. So he'll pick up a needle from time to time. Indeed,
yes, and he manages all my sales at my classes and things, so he's got a very good knowledge of all the needlework tools and terminology now.
Of course, if he wants to see Jenny, he probably needs to get involved.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's the deal.
Now, what your daughter? Does she? Is it your daughter?
Yes.
Does she get involved in any way, or is it like, oh, no more of that?
No, she's very keen. She has a go at stitching, and she's very keen on drawing at the moment. So drawing is the real thing, and she'll sit and draw for hours. So I'm hoping that will lead into stitch drawings at some point. But
well, your family has a real art gene in it somewhere. Holy smokes!
They do seem to. Yes, they're definitely on the creative side.
That's tremendous. Well, it's. Even if she never does anything with it other than just has it as a side thing, it's... Oh,
she said to me a couple of days ago, you know, when I'm drawing, I'm just so happy. And I thought that's exactly what it's about, isn't it? Yeah. If you can relax into something and get lost in it and therefore sit and do it for hours and you don't realize the clock's going round, then that ultimately is pleasure, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the magic goal right there. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what new designs do we have coming up?
So I'm currently completing the brooch for Ushaw, this Pugin-inspired brooch, and then the next thing is to work on more of these three-dimensional birds. Everyone keeps asking me for more of those, so I've got a whole list of them that I'm about to do.
And now, when you do a piece for a class, then do you also make that available through your website?
Yes, I do. My website currently doesn't have a shop on it, but that's because we've been busy creating a new website, which is going to launch on the 1st of September, which will be a full web shop with all the many materials and tools and equipment and kits that we sell, which we take to classes and have done for the last 10 years, but people want to be able to buy them online, of course. So I've been too fussy about the look of it, so it's been taking a while. But it's nearly ready.
You got to lighten up.
No, absolutely. People keep telling me, "Oh, just get on with it," but I want it to look good.
No, that's okay. Perfection's a good goal. There's nothing wrong with perfection.
It is in small degree, yeah. You have to calm it down sometimes.
Yep. Jenny, really have enjoyed this. Thank you.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Yep. I learned things, and I always like that. That's a great thing.
Excellent. That's what we want.
All right. Thanks to everybody for listening, and thank you, Jenny.